Hello, folks. This is your host, Dr. Graham Taylor. I'm so excited to tell you about the upcoming Triad Mental Health Summit Week, taking place online August 20th through the 22nd. This 3-day event is free to attend and will cover different themes each day: positive change and equality on the 20th, simplifying the pathway to licensure on the 21st, and elevating therapeutic skills on the 22nd. Join us for one day or all three to gain valuable insights and practical knowledge that will help you in your professional growth. Both Charlene Dixon and I will be hosting live interviews, and we'll even have time at the end to field questions from our audience. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity. Learn more and register today at triadhq.com/TMHS. We look forward to having you there.
Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a podcast brought to you by the Triad Network. This podcast is designed to share trending topics occurring within the world and our communities and bring them a behavioral and mental health perspective.
Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a Triad production. I'm your host, Dr. Graham Taylor. My guest today is Dr. Marie-Helene Pelletier. MH, as she likes to be called, is an accomplished expert in leadership and burnout within high-performing cultures. With extensive qualifications and corporate experience, she champions workplace mental health strategies to foster wellness, motivation, and productivity. Known for her engaging presentations, blending research, data, and humor, MH translates complex psychological findings into practical solutions for professionals and leaders. As the author of the Resilience Plan, a strategic approach to optimizing your work performance and mental health, she offers invaluable insights into resilience and peak performance. We're excited to have MH with us today as we delve into the topic of fostering resilience in the workplace and sharing insights from her book, The Resilience Plan. Marie, it's so nice to have you here.
Oh, Graham, it's absolutely a pleasure for me to be here.
Well, you're very kind. Actually, as I mentioned in the intro, I'm going to refer to you through this podcast as MH, something you like to be called, and so I'm going to do so from here on out. I'm looking and learning about you. You have your doctorate in psychology. You've got your MBA in business from British Columbia and University Laval, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
That's right.
And you got this great ability to have your foot and knowledge and expertise in both worlds, which means that, you get to bring the latest research and proven best practices, approaches into this intersection of some really cool work in your consultation and your teachings. And what is it in your own personal history, in your own working history, in demanding roles yourself, that got you to be thinking about resilience from your own experiences?
Yeah. Combination. So earlier in my career, I had the chance to work in northern regions, and at the time I was an early career psychologist. And one of the things I did everything literally up north. That's what you do. But one of them was employee and family assistance programs.
Okay.
Early days for EAPs at the time. That's a couple of decades ago, and seeing how this way people were connecting with me and other service providers a bit more proactively than perhaps they would have otherwise if they had to pay and find someone and all these things. And so seeing how if we use the research and we're able to just share small pieces of information early, it can change the course of things in such a beautiful way. Someone who could have ended up otherwise with depression or high anxiety can change the course of things so much earlier. And a lot of that has to do with building up those protective factors for our mental health, including building our resilience. So that's one of the ways. And then there are others through my own experience as a leader at various levels and seeing the importance of doing this to be able to do what we enjoy doing. And then now in the work that I do with people I work with.
Yeah. I love the idea of being able to have the business side again and the psychology side, that term or that concept, early identification, early intervention. And you're saying if you know what to look for and what to listen for, you can see these things early on and maybe change a course rather than having someone go way down that course. You can make a U-turn early and maybe head off some things. And we're going to get to the book in a moment with the whole idea of resilience. But in terms of things that you're looking for and listening for, what stands out to you as some of the early warning signs and things that we can possibly change early on if we just listen right and learn about them?
I know. I think the first thing that often professionals and leaders need to shift is to realize they have to pay attention. Refers to the concept of self awareness that we hear a lot about in emotional intelligence. And sometimes the analogy I use is look, if you were in your business and one of the places where you'd get information about how things are going is the financial statements, who
Mhm.
would ever say, don't show me the financial statements unless there is an absolute crisis?
Right.
No one would ever do that. We want to see the financial statements. We
Yeah.
want to read through them, catch early trends, change them quickly.
Yeah.
Same thing here on our resilience. It's as if we do the opposite here. We just say, I'm fine until we're not. You're either a rock or, oh, suddenly I'm a wreck. And it's in part because we didn't pay attention. So,
Right.
one of the things to shift early in this overall situation is to let go of the concept of seeing yourself as a rock who is inherently resilient and that's just the way it is. No, we're not. It's not a personality trait, it's a state that we can
Mhm.
nourish and sustain over time. So, therefore, we have to pay attention to how it's going so that this needs to happen first, because otherwise, why would you take action on something you feel you are, right?
Right. Right. That's really good. So you're kind of weaving in not just is there an awareness, and you're suggesting maybe as supervisors, managers, and this can extend to those that are listening as parents and as friendships and any part of our life really. As you're talking, a system's a system. But you're talking about if we can have that awareness early, if within ourselves, that the EQ has got basically 4 steps: recognizing what's going on within inside of us, being able to manage that, and then empathically trying to attune to what's going on for somebody else, and then bringing us together to work on something. So you're talking about maybe with managers, supervisors, using some early detection, early awareness, both of what's going on for them in their position, but also what's going on for those that they're supervising or managing, and then finding ways to bring those together in some positive ways.
Yes. Yes. And more. And so in what you're describing, there is the awareness of the leader and then the additional awareness
Right.
of the team members also. And the additional piece I think that can be useful is as we're thinking about our awareness as leaders, there is the self-awareness, me, what's going on for me and all this.
Yeah.
There is this collective awareness also. So it's still part
Mm.
of who I am as a leader, but it's my collective. In this case, it's my team, which is also part of my own awareness. And then, yes, there is what belongs more exclusively to the individual team members. So, all these pieces, yes, need to receive attention. And it's not like you have to give it 5 hours a day. Sometimes you
Yeah.
say this to an extremely busy leader, and they're like, I,
Right.
really, do I need to do this? And I don't have time for this and all of this. It's not long. We're
Yeah.
literally talking. You could take 5 deep breaths and actually have a sense of where that's at.
I
But
was thinking
it's
that's yes, that's good. Say more about that piece. You can do it as your day goes on. Just
yeah.
if you know what to look for early.
If you know what to look for, and if things are extremely busy, you may need to actually record it.
Mm.
What gets measured gets done also applies for us and our self awareness, psychological health, all kinds of things. So sometimes it's a matter of if you're using a paper based agenda, a check mark every day means you've done your check in with yourself. Simple as that. But then,
Yeah.
if you notice, yesterday there wasn't any check marks. There were meeting overlapping, and just we it goes sometimes.
Yes.
And maybe today you're making it a priority to make sure that check mark goes in.
Yeah, really good. I like the part you said leading into this piece right here. It's, when we're dealing with somebody, that EQ piece and the awareness piece, what's going on for me, what's going on for them, but then what's going on for us collectively. What a nice view that is to bring that together, I think, in a very synergistic way, ideally. And then this idea is you don't need to spend 5 hours a day doing this. In fact, probably the flip side of this is if you don't do this, you're going to be spending 5 hours a day. That's the other side. So, but if we can do it in an ongoing way where we're caring for one another, we're aware of one another, we're in this in a joint way, it can really even move into more of a collaborative approach where we're encouraging each other to do the same thing of awareness.
Yes. And building a culture where we're checking in, We're making a bit of time to do this. We're protecting boundaries perhaps a bit better, creating a culture that also then leads to that psychological health and safety that we hear more and more about, thankfully. But it does contribute to teams that will function even more effectively, be more creative, innovative, and all of these beautiful things we want.
I think it's a great segue into this idea that we can build a culture with intention, like building a family. What kind of family do you want to have? And what kind of experiences, what kind of interactions you want to have? And we get to do that with our systems at work and the culture that we can be intentional about, not just organically let it happen, but to be intentional to make it happen. And if we can do so, then that's where the effectiveness and the creativity and ingenuity just naturally emerge and kind of actuate, itself, or actualize itself. Let's shift. Let's talk about your book and resilience. And as we talk about resilience, what is resilience?
Yes, many definitions
All
actually
right.
exist. And so it's a good idea to start with this just so we're all on the same page for right now. Um, so, one definition that's fairly used, the one I'm using, our ability to go through adversity and come out even stronger.
Mm.
Okay, so there's a growth element to this. We're going through adversity, meaning could be acute demands, but also could be chronic demands. Often we have a combination of those. And so often people will recognize faster the acute ones and disregard the chronic ones because they've been there for a longer time and that, but they still represent demands. But it does mean also that this is, like we said earlier, not a personality trait, something you can nourish, will fluctuate over time. So we have an opportunity.
Opportunity for growth. I've read some of the resilience research and it's fascinating. Tell me or tell us all some of the research that goes into resilience and the idea that through adversity, we can actually grow. What are you finding and what are you sharing with people?
Yeah. Well, there's many angles that make this, I think, such an important focus at a high level, large level, societal level. We do hear, all of us, and we have experienced or know people around us that have experienced psychological challenges. And a lot of what is going on is that there are limited resources. Access to, working with a professional if you wanted to can be challenging. Sometimes you may find one, but their list is full or their fees are too high. There's a number of things that make actual access to improving our overall psychological health and our resilience challenging. But we do know that there are protective factors. There are things that we can do that actually don't require connecting with a professional, don't require resources. And we've got body of research on this. Things like, and here's the thing, I'm going to say these things, and it will be tempting to internally roll your eyes and say, yeah, give me something else. But the reality, and that's what we know from research, is that these variables are actually very significant in the resilience equation. Things like exercise, spending time on cardio, strength training, and meditative type activities. And for a lot of this, you do not need to invest necessarily. At times, nothing, sometimes a
Right.
little bit for shoes that are healthy for you. But other than that, it could be it. Time in nature, we actually know from research, we don't actually fully understand the mechanisms as to how it operates. There are some hypotheses, but we do know if you're going to go for a walk and you have a choice between sidewalk and park, assuming the park is safe, go in the park.
Mm.
Better for your psychological health, just like that.
Yeah.
So these are choices that we can make that will have an influence, and that can be so significant. Now, we also know specifically about going through challenges that it's not the challenge that determines whether you're going to grow or not grow. It's how you're writing that story, how
Mm.
you're thinking about it, which will influence how you feel and how you react to it. And from there can be growth. Absolutely. So many things we don't have control over, and a number of things we do. So we want to optimize that.
We'll be right back after word from our sponsor.
Whether you're a longtime or first-time listener to Behavioral Health Today, you're probably familiar with Triad, the company that brings you this podcast. But you may not know that Triad also hosts a community for current and aspiring behavioral and mental health professionals, featuring trending content and education and career resources, all for free. If you are a behavioral or mental health professional, or you're studying to become one, Join more than 80,000 people on Triad by claiming your free professional account today. Visit us at hellotriad.com/BHT. That's hellotriad.com/BHT and join the Triad community today.
Those are so good. You're talking about ways that what I love about those, one, they're research based, and we always want to kind of be able to come back to best practices. And I think that's just really essential because they work and they've been tried and true. And going back just a wee bit, you're saying ideally the term of resilience, oftentimes we use things like, something springs back into shape, or maybe there's an
Right.
elasticity or balance. But what I love that you're saying is that actually you can be better after the challenge. I think there are certain things. In fact, there's a research I just read the other day. I wish I had more access to it right now. There's part of our brain when we push ourselves through difficult things that actually grows. You see this in athletes most typically, and there's an expansion of the self. The Navy SEALs demonstrated pretty clearly. You think you can do this, and they say, "Well, what if you can go 5 more feet?" Oh, I didn't know that I could do that. Now I can, and I can grow and I can grow. And each one is an adverse moment, but you get to expand. And you thought maybe this was who I am, maybe this big, but really who I am, because I've been pushed, I'm actually this big, or I'm this capable, or I'm this able to do some things that I didn't think that I can do. And we're going to get into kind of how you do that with other people in your life. But even things like the positives, like exercise or being outside, grounding, being barefoot on the ground, and just allowing the electromagnetic piece kind of come into us. And I love the piece. I want you to park on this just for a moment for me. The narrative and how it's not the thing, it's not the adversity, because that's neutral. It's what we assign to it and the meaning we attach to it. Can you expand upon that piece just a wee bit for us?
No, that's in part what talk therapy is based on,
Right.
really, right at a big picture, because there are human experiences that are more on the challenging side. Huh?
Yeah.
And so there was research, and I don't remember the exact nature of the challenging event that these parents had gone through, but it was a set of parents that had a child, and that there was a particular clearly observable challenge that most parent would consider that a very difficult challenge.
Right.
But they were looking at what differentiated these parents over time and how they were doing, and had found that this is they were noticing in how they were recounting the experience, the stories that they were describing was
Right.
different, right? And it, of course, connects very well with what we would know from cognitive behavior therapy, that the ways in which we talk to ourselves, the self-talk, the thoughts we have connected to the beliefs we hold, will have an impact on how we feel, which then impacts on how we react and all this. So, and the more you actively nourish, for all of us, in all kinds of situations, the ways in which we take our brains, the more the brain will take that direction. That's
You bet.
connecting with neuroplasticity of the brain,
Yes.
how we can shape that. And there are lots of benefits for all of us to be had there. We can shape ours, we can shape our teams. If we're working with our team and we're going through something very challenging, the simple fact of someone on the team saying, we have no idea how to solve this, and
Right.
we find a solution, sets everyone's brain in that direction. So we still need to work on it. It's not going to appear by magic, but
No.
it puts us in that mode.
It's a whole different mode. Sometimes, we don't recognize, and I love what you're doing here, MH, around this idea. You're bringing in these researched strategies that are best practices that are actually steeped in some wonderful decades old research that really, really, really works. And we can implement it. There's so many cool psychological pieces that are out there for us to use, but not everybody like you is bringing them together. You're bringing them together in ways that are very applicable. And you're even saying, hey, we got to, boy, this is going to be a difficult, challenge we have in front of us. And, the boss wants this and the company wants this. You could take it like that, but then that makes everybody kind of in a fear-based, concern-based way. Or you could say, hey, we got a great challenge in front of us. I'm excited about what we're going to find together and what we're going to be doing. That just opens everything up, doesn't it? And how we frame it is how we're going to be coming into it.
That's right. That's right. And paying deliberate attention
Yeah.
to that mindset, again, does not take that much time, really.
No.
It's just a choice that we need to make a bit more deliberately that will help us as we continue to move forward.
When you put it like that, I can imagine even throughout our day, we have multiple opportunities. in business, we've got multiple opportunities to just as we go through the day, decide how am I going to address this? We got this meeting in the afternoon, and how am I going to come into that with my best self? Or we're talking as a team, and how might we shape that moment? We can shape our moments. I think it was Henry Ford that says, whether you think you can or you think you can't, either way, you're going to be right. And it's true. If I can think we can, well, then it opens everything up. We can be creative, innovative, all the things you're saying. But if
Yes.
it's like, oh no, or fear based, or our old dysfunctional thoughts, a cognitive behavioral piece, our automatic thoughts that are dysfunctional, then it keeps us small, afraid, shame based, all those things. And it stifles all the potential growth that we have. What are some of the challenges that you find, MH, around people building and trying to build resilience? And what are the challenges and how are you helping them overcome them?
One of the key challenges is that people know, for most
Yeah.
part, we know some of the things we should do, could do, actually really want to do that would probably help, but we're not doing them. Um,
Okay.
so people, it's usually because their life is very full already and even more overflowing. And so
Right.
they're not finding the time. And then to some degree, even it goes in the other direction where they now then feel disappointed in themselves that they did not also fit in this bike ride or this run or this meditation, whatever it is. So they're not doing it and they're beating themselves up for not having done it. And
Right.
that just keeps going. And then they don't do it. They try to meet all these demands. And now we're trending down because we're expanding more energy than we're filling back the tank. And so one of the things that is missing in this equation is them realizing that the context they're in requires to translate these nice idealistic pieces into their reality.
Mm.
And that's when the concept of, back to the book, of bringing strategy and psychology together makes a difference. Because otherwise, especially after pandemic, most people have now a bit more clarity that yes, research backs up all these beautiful things. And if we could say by magic, we're going to fit all this in your life, do you want it? They'd say yes. However, it's not happening. And what's missing is taking into account their context, the strategy angle.
Really good. Name some of the contexts that you might find in your work being more challenging maybe than other contexts.
Yes. Well, it depends, but maybe I'll share, how
Okay.
do we get to this? Like, how do I know my context, or what part of my context do I need to manage?
Good.
Okay,
Good.
here's how the book itself, literally the idea of this came. So I often talk to people who are in business, and they would come to me and say, MH, I don't know what my problem is. I've been dealing with things seriously more complicated than what I'm dealing with right now. And this is not working right now.
Mm.
I'm not doing this right. So what's my problem? So then I'd say, okay, look, if you were in business and you had a fantastic idea, next product, next service, whatever, would you just say, oh, I got a great idea, let's try to do it? Or would you say, I got a great idea, let's look at who else is offering this, how much are they charging for it, who's buying it, what forces in the future could impact it? You would do all this. You'd be looking at the context. Then you would develop your strategy and you would go to market. Success. Same thing here. Yes, you've got this great idea. You want to say exercise, meditate, whatever. Now we need to look at your context specifically. All right, let's start with, what are your values? Let's revisit this. A lot of people have done this kind of work before. Fine, write it down. Most important things for you in life. Let's have this. That's part of your context.
Right.
Then we want to look at, what kinds of demands are you facing right now? And what are your sources of supply? I can come back to this, but that is a point where many people get this wrong. Then we're looking at, and I'm using literally the same structure that in business we would use, the SWOT analysis, internal
Yes.
strengths and weaknesses, external opportunities and threats. Same thing here. And once you have this, then maybe no, you're not going to try to go from nothing to 5 times a week, half-hour cardio. It's actually not possible right now, given this. But what is possible? Oh, Maybe it is possible for me to go stand outside for 2 minutes once a day.
Right.
And that's going to be part of this. Maybe there will be a pillar here. One of your three strategic pillars will be health. One of your tactics or behaviors will be this specific thing. And this overall strategy, just like in business, you will write it for a period of time, whatever, 2 months, 3 months. After which, just like any other strategy, you'll see where you're at and maybe create the next iteration.
I like that. So you're setting people up for success by taking small, measurable, doable steps without a whole lot of pressure. Just go outside, just stand outside 5 minutes. It's gone almost, and then you're talking about then from there we can kind of scaffold it and do more when we're ready. But taking into context the context someone is in, and what does this apply? What can they do, and what's realistic? So you're almost. It sounds like in this process too, you're helping people think through. This just isn't a cookie cutter approach. This is what's specific to you, that's accessible, that's doable. Say more about that part of the assessment because you're asking people to really assess themselves and be. I guess it's that awareness you talked about earlier.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's very, very personal. So it's the same thing
Yes.
as, again, a good strategic plan will be customized to this particular product in this moment, in this team, in this organization. It's like, what do we have exactly here? So same thing here. So it is in part, yes, getting to what you will choose to. You're not going to focus on 20 things. There will be three strategic pillars with
Yes.
one action in each, maybe more over time, but initially it's only one. And what's small for you may not be small for me.
Right.
So if you say go stand outside 5 minutes, but let's say whatever my work context is such that, you know what, to go stand outside for 5 minutes, I don't have access to a balcony. It means an elevator through 30 floors. I'm going to miss my next meeting. Not
Right.
possible, not easy for me. So
Right.
I need something different. So was this small enough? What's your problem, MH, that you're not able to do this? It's, well, in my context, it's going to look different.
Yeah. We led into this by saying what makes it difficult to do some of these things, and we get busy, and we maybe have a narrow view of some things, and people sometimes in their way of being in the world don't recognize opportunities that are easily doable. Maybe I can't go downstairs because I got 30 floors in an elevator, and every time I'm on it, it seems to stop at every single floor. So it takes me forever to get down and then back up again. But maybe I could put on my headphones and kind of turn my computer off and just listen to some quiet music or just do some breathing just to kind of center myself. But these are things you're saying that we can do. And these are some real strategic tips. We can do them every day in our life, let alone be doing them at work.
That's right. And another piece that will increase the likelihood that we'll say consider this is that second piece I was mentioning, that sort of looking at your sources of supply and demand. Because here's what happens with this. Usually I'll say, okay, so what kinds of demands are you dealing with? Like, go for it, tell me. And then they'll usually tell me two or three things that are challenging on the work side, like the most difficult things right now. Okay. Then I'll say, okay, keep going, list more. Then they'll find additional things and they'll stop there. And I'll say, okay, but how about on the personal side? Well, personal. No, it counts. It's the emotions don't have lanes. It's all going to
Mm.
be in you. So yeah, get the demands out there. And in the same thing, they'll start with, a few things that are challenging on the personal side. But then I'll keep asking and I'll say, well, how about positive things, but still demanding your energy? Oh yeah, we're
Mm.
moving to a new home. Really excited about this. Oh, well, that goes on the demand list as well. And then, or as we talk, they'll even sometimes feel uncomfortable saying it, but they'll say, well, I do have a family member who's dealing with a health issue and I'm
Yes.
supporting them. They don't even want to put it on the list because they feel like it's so natural and obvious. And yes, they want to do it. But then that means they're minimizing or disregarding the actual overall demands they have. And by actually being more realistic about this, having a fuller view, that is often what then allows them to see the difference between all these demands that end up really building quite a bit. And then they look at the supply side and I keep them on the line because I'll say things, what kinds of things bring your energy? And they'll say, oh, I'd really like to go for long walks in the forest. Great. How many times in the past 2 weeks? Well, the past couple of months has been particularly busy, so not now, but
Yeah.
well, then it doesn't go on the list.
Right.
And then they realize the difference. And that's why, in part, this realization is important because you get to a point where you see it. You're like, okay, what ends up happening in my life does not very much correspond to my values. The correspondence, I don't say balance because balance sounds like it should be like equal. No, not necessarily.
Yeah.
But the disconnect is so
Disconnect.
obvious that
Yes.
then it motivates.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I would imagine that that's quite an empathic process that you get in with people, and you're talking about there's a scale we can use called the SUDS scale, subjective units of distress, and whether it's buying a new home or having a new baby or a new job or new position. These are all great things, but they all come with certain demands. And then there's some things that maybe aren't quite so bright and shiny that are harder. The loss of somebody or something being challenging, a health issue, whatever it may be. That you're helping people kind of open up their aperture of or increasing the aperture around, wow, I never thought about how impactful these things might be. And I would imagine that for some folks, they just think, oh, I'm just not doing a good job. And so they get negative and down on themselves, which becomes kind of a slippery slope of kind of self deprecation and putting oneself down. See, I can't do these things. But when you recognize with them, life is really hard for you right now. Plus, you're trying to do this new project. I would imagine that when you're kind of empathic in that moment, they probably give themselves some grace and
Yes.
say, yeah, it
Yes.
is hard right now. And then it also allows you to say, well, maybe what's one small measurable thing you can do that would be just for you. Maybe it is going outside of the balcony for 5 minutes. And yeah, I can do that. I love this approach. It's empathic at best, grace giving as well. And maybe kind of helping someone appreciate, man, I never thought about it this way. No one ever spoken to me about it this way.
I know. Yeah, you're completely right. That clarity in itself, because otherwise you're in this nebulous discomfort that you
Yes.
don't fully understand and you don't have time to investigate. So it's a disregard it, let it go, and keep moving. But having that clarity in itself is
Yeah.
relaxing. So and gives you a sense of control and then moves you forward in that, yes, I can take that next action. And because you design it to be very doable, given your context, it
Yeah.
does build that belief that you can influence it, that sense of self-efficacy, which we know from research builds in this situation, but the more you do it here, the more it will influence how you think in other situations. And we're back to even more resilience.
Yeah, I love that. That self-efficacy, the fact that I can control these things is absolutely huge. Your book, The Resilience Plan. Tell me more about the book and maybe another area you're most excited about for people to kind of learn from and grow from.
One of the things that leads all of us to be in that state where we just keep moving forward no matter what kind of thing is that sense of optimism, an optimistic perspective, sometimes too far, almost, where we're saying, yes, I can, I'm moving forward, I'm taking this on, all these things.
Right.
And to some degree, it's adaptive because we're not getting bogged down by all the things that could slow us down. But you get to a point where if you do only that, you're going to
Mhm.
be disregarding. So keeping that optimism and pairing it with even more clarity usually helps. But one of the things I do talk about in the book as well, in the spirit of having even more clarity overall, is I do have a chapter in there about when people don't listen and find themselves into full on burnout, needing to be
Mm.
off work for health reasons. And I say this because in a lot of my work with individuals, sometimes I have to be really on the reality check with them and say, look, you're usually operating at a 10 out of 10 level of energy or a 9.5 ish, but you're like up
Right.
there. And now we're saying that you've seen yourself go down to 8, to 7, to 6. So I say your next stop is not 8.5. We've
Mm.
been trending down here. So if nothing changes, and I'm talking about fairly muscular change to reverse
Yes.
that trend, this is next stop. And I describe how these next stops look like. And that's why it was important to be in the book because then, I mean, mostly I'm more on the carrot side of things, but this
Mhm.
is the stick part where you need to know, it's not
This can happen.
what can happen. Yes.
Yes.
And it's useful for us, for ourselves. It's also useful for people around us. because some people in our team, some people in our lives will be in these situations. And the more we develop more of that understanding of, no, we're not going from rock to wreck just like that. There's been signs, there are resources, there are things we can do. And of course, even if we get here, we can come back out. That's part of what professionals do to help. But it's not worth visiting. And so that is one part of the book that I've made sure to include, even though most of the book is about just how to build your
Yeah.
custom strategic resilience plan, so
Yeah.
that you have just full visibility on this. And
I
hopefully
really,
that will get in the hands of early professionals so they can know that early.
well, that goes back to where we started today. If we can identify these things early,
Yeah,
we
that
can
too.
intervene early and we can make a quick U-turn and set up our lives to be in ways that we can actually fashion them to be optimistic, hopeful, making sure there's good self-care in there, checking our context, taking a look at our supplies, all these things that we can be actively doing. It's really what I love about what you're bringing in is you're teaching people how they can actually be and function that's actually under their control. Again, that idea. And why not live this way? But not everybody knows how to do that. We know we do what we know, we do what we grew up with, and we do what we taught, but maybe we're not taught these things. And I love the idea that you're able to come in and hold these things up to people. And as I'm saying that, I'm wondering about, as you've done your work, what's a maybe a case study that stands out to you where you came in and man, it was a train wreck or it was really challenging, and a story from your intervention, you're seeing some really cool turnaround happen. Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, yeah. I love that one particularly because it says a bit of what you're asking, but another piece to it. So when you write a book, this is my only book, so I'm learning everything as I go, literally. But one of the things that you can do early on is to do a focus group to test some of the ideas of your book. So you have people, you get them to do the exercises, in my case, of what are in the book, so that they can provide feedback and you can improve the whatever worksheets, content,
Mhm.
all that. And so in one of those focus groups, a female leader was there and she engaged and did all the things and created her plan. But there were questionnaires before and after. So I knew some of what she was coming with was, I have no control over my schedule. My life is, I'm running all day after all the things that just need to happen. And it was not pleasant. I was glad she was there, really.
Yes.
So she did her plan. Great, moving on and all this. A couple of weeks later, I get an email from her saying, I'm leading a team of leaders and we have a retreat in a few months. Could you come and deliver that exact workshop?
Yes.
Great. Yes, sure I can. So I get there a few months later. She's there, says hello in person because all that was virtual the first round, and says, I'm just going to sit in the back this time, let my team do their own thing. At the end of that second piece, she comes and she's beaming because she says, okay, I was thinking I would just sit at the back and let the others enjoy this. I decided, because you were doing the workshop anyway, to see where I'm at and just re-engage in doing
Yeah.
the thing. And she realized, and that's the beauty, she realized that she had implemented her first plan successfully. Those things were now there. So she was ready to create her next iteration of her strategic plan, which she had done. And she was now even more excited because she knew she had done it before and had felt the impact, and she was ready for the next round. How cool is
That's so
this?
good. That's just so cool. That's why you do what you do right there.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's exactly, but that's the thing also. I designed this so that
Yeah.
I'm not using 20 tools.
No.
There's 3 pieces of homework here, really. And some of them are 5 minutes, some of them maybe 10 minutes, but nothing takes long. If you have a flight crossing the continent or the ocean, you will be able to get in the flight with your book, get out with your plan.
Wow.
It's doable. Yeah.
That's a cool little tagline right there. Get on the flight with your books and come out with your plan. I love that. I love that. We're kind of winding down here for today, but I would love for you to leave our listeners with kind of a takeaway message about just this idea of resilience and how it's attainable, how it's wonderful to have in our lives, and how they can apply it to their personal and professional lives. Leave us with a takeaway message, would you?
Yes. So I would say, stay curious. Stay
Okay.
curious about where you can think even more strategically about your resilience and speak this way, even when you talk to others, and of course, implement. But stay curious because to find these small, doable, matching your context action, you need to pay attention. So stay curious.
I love that. And that's something that we have access to. Just ask questions or maybe raise questions with each other and kind of ping back and forth, much like we get to do today. Well, I've so enjoyed our time. MH, I would love for folks after our time today to follow up with you, learn more about you and your work, your book, the Resilience Plan. How can they do so?
Yes, yes. And we'll have the information there. But you can go to theresilienceplan.com. It will get you to my book, what I do, me, all that. LinkedIn, always a great place to connect as well, because then we can see each other's conversations and
Yeah.
share. So that's another great place.
Awesome. Great. Well, you're right. We will put that up on our site as well. And it's been great to have you. Great to meet you. I want to talk about your website just real quick. You have a dynamic website. Wow. It is
Oh,
so fun to peruse and just kind of go through, and there's so many things on there. And it's a wonderful resource in and of itself. So I would encourage our listeners to check it out also. So, but for
thank
today, thank you so much. Great to have you with us. And we're going to have you back at some point. But for today, thank you.
Oh, thank you. And I'd love to be back, Graham. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure as well. Thanks so much. I also want to thank you, our listeners, for dropping by and joining me today. It's always great to have you with us. I want to remind you that this episode and all of our resources can be found on our webpage at triadhq.com/BHT. Thanks again for being with us on the show. And we'll look forward to having you back with us next time on Behavioral Health Today.
We appreciate all the support from our community, and if you like our show, one of the best ways you can support it is by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review. Behavioral Health Today is a podcast part of the Triad Behavioral Health Network, all rights reserved.